Hello, and welcome again to the Three Blind Mice podcast. We have another special guest today, Greg Bartemes from the BAOA. And boy, does he have a lot to talk about with high school football and things that are coming up. Now, as always, I'm here with Don Nardecchia and Jim Borgia. And good morning, gentlemen. How's things going this morning?
Pretty good down here from Northern Virginia, where we're
From
in the
Northern
midst of
Virginia.
a 3 week vacation that'll end up with our book signing. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of cleaning yet. This is the week we're moving Mom up, and just was told after our little shindig for my stepsister's 50th wedding anniversary on Saturday or Sunday, we're going to be moving Mom up Sunday. So
Great.
I can't eat too much.
Away we go. So don't forget to click the link below. Like and subscribe so you can get our latest updates and follow us on Facebook. So without further ado, we're going to bring on our special guest. And Don, away you go.
Thanks, Jimmy. Hey, Greg. There's Greg Bartemes down there.
Yeah.
Greg is going to be the main focal point of this show today. Greg is a longtime football and basketball guy, like I did. He retired from basketball but kept on going football. He was also a longtime secretary of the Bay Area Officials Association. Glad to see he's sporting the colors and the crest there. He was basically in charge of operations and of the Bay Area, and he did a phenomenal job in as things change in Columbus to get a lot of our officials noticed down there very quickly, and he can brag all day about how well he did getting members of our association into the football playoffs. But he's here today to talk rules. Greg, when did you start officiating? What years did you start? And what year did you move up our way?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. This is
Absolutely
an honor and a pleasure. We moved from the Urbana, Ohio area up to the Sandusky area. We moved to Huron in the winter of '93, and then of course I had my basketball and football license down in Urbana, and I had the pleasure of having a mentor down there that was well known throughout the state of Ohio, and a gentleman by the name of Dave Nash. So he kind of taught me the right and wrong of the old school officiating ethics, which I try to carry on to this day. But it was fun to join the Sandusky Association and meet gentlemen like yourself, and there's a lot of good officials there, and we had a good time.
Yeah,
a little bit about your officiating experience, and as far as when you took over a white hat and when you started working the playoffs.
It's I can't remember what year that was, but when I moved up here, my sons were starting to get older, and I refereed varsity football for a couple years, and varsity basketball, and then I had a son that became a sophomore, and he started playing varsity, so I bowed out of doing varsity football, and I had three sons. So by the time all three of them went through the Huron program, it was probably, I don't know, maybe eight to 10 years. So probably around 83 time frame, something like that. But in the meantime, they asked me to be the 7th grade football coach at Huron. So I was the 7th grade coach at Huron, but I maintained my license, still did some lower level games now and then and that sort of thing. I remember I used to hold practice on a Saturday morning for the 7th grade team where we went over our punt and kick return drills, and then I'd run across the street. You know, we do that on a practice field. Then I'd run across the street and officiate the freshman JV game right afterwards. So I did that for a while, and then one day I had two of Bay Area officials approach me, Jim Gaudiello and Greg Bartemes. Jimmy has passed, and Greg is no longer officiating. But they asked me to be their referee. And, and I said, well, who else is on the crew? So they said, Mark Sisson's the umpire, but we don't have a back judge. And the year before, I was filling in on Steve Cromer's crew, varsity crew. I filled in like eight of the 10 games as an umpire. And Dave Winery was on that crew. So I said, I know who can be a back judge. And I told them, I said, why don't you approach Dave Winery and see if he can do it? So they did, and Dave accepted, and it was the 5 of us for a while. And Dave and I, we did basketball together as well, and all those years in football. So, I don't know, from what, 2004, 2003 or something, and that sort of thing. So it was a fun ride with him, and he stepped away 2 years ago to watch his grandson play varsity football, but then tragically he suffered a stroke. He's doing well physically and that sort of thing, but he still mentally he still has a few issues from that illness or whatever you want to refer to it. And so I don't know if Dave is going to ever be able to get back into it, but throughout the years, I was looking at names, and there were like 10 or so different guys, through those years formed our crew, but Dave was always there with me. And we had different guys come and go and so on and so forth. But I was looking at those 10 main names. 5 of us were able to had the honor of officiating a state championship game. So, it was, we tried to do it right. And I think we got a little bit of recognition along those lines. And it was a good time. It's fun. And it's the people that you meet in doing this, just it's unbelievable how the friends you run into and the people you meet and just the outstanding human beings that you come across in this profession of ours.
Yeah,
but it is amazing, that we talk and I talk often about the fellowship of officials and how it reaches across the different sports. It has no borders. Right away, our guest last week, Riley Johnson, I met him. We became very good friends down here. It's worldwide. It's not just football and basketball. You got soccer, you got rugby, all these things. The officials are all in it for the same reason. And it's really, once you make that bond, even when you're done officiating, you're still part of that bond. And David, of all the guys that I had seen over our years, he was always our first grab. If we had a Saturday night game, one of our guys couldn't make it, which happens often on Saturday night game, Dave was always there ready to jump in with us. And we had a lot of fun with Dave, just, maybe one game a season. He could run like a gazelle and
Hmm.
just was a solid guy. So,
And it's a team effort
Yes,
yeah,
when you're out
it
there.
sure is.
It's not
absolutely.
not yourself. It's everybody involved, and
So
that's
you're still got a varsity schedule.
correct. I'm
Okay.
still working varsity games this season and next season. This is my
Okay.
39th year, and next year will be my 40th,
Perfect.
and then I will retire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know when
Yeah,
to say
very
when,
good.
they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's
Yeah.
what I thought. Basketball, there's a couple little things that showed me that some of the moves in transition and stuff just weren't coming smooth anymore. And those things are only going to continue to degrade a little bit. It's time to leave before somebody says you should retire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's it. When it's time, you know.
and
Yeah.
basketball was hard on my knees. The stop and the
Yes.
Oh,
start
sure,
and the
sure.
turn
Yes.
and that.
Absolutely.
So
Ankles.
so I retired from basketball.
Yeah.
Well, I did have one little quick thing to say about Dave. I'm pretty sure he's the reason they brought the ability for us to wear sunglasses in the fall.
Yeah, he
Oh, I
was.
love Dave. So,
That and the moose. That and the moose. Got to keep that hair in place.
Yeah,
so before we get into the rules and stuff, we have a quick ad by Mr. Nardecchia about our upcoming book signing.
Well, here we go. You see it right there now. September 13th and 14th is going to be a big weekend for the book. We're pricing this differently than we have ever done, and it's because we're home and we just want books to get around to people. Hopefully, they'll write nice reviews for us. But the pricing, which only you can only get from us, is $15 cash. We're doing business out of the trunk. We kind of joke. If you want to order them, if you can't get around Norwalk, to order them off of eBay or eBay, order them off of Amazon. It's $16.49 for the book, plus tax, plus shipping if you're not a Prime member. So our signing is going to be in two spots. Friday night the 13th, they're doing Market on Main. I think it's the last one of the season. It's a fun night with a lot of vendors uplining the western half of Main Street. And we're going to be at the Common Good Collective, a real popular little store up there that just has all kinds of things. People come in there and just browse for a long time, just finding really neat things. So we're going to be there at the Common Good, and that one will go from 4 to 7:30. The downtown Market on Main goes from 4 to 8. So we're only going to be there till 7:30. Rick will not be at that one because he's traveling home from vacation to make the one the next morning, which is our book signing breakfast gathering at the Buckeye Pub and Grub, which is on Jefferson Street in Norwalk. We're going to do that from 8:30 to 12. And the reason that I'm leaving early on Friday night is to get down to Warren Whitney Field for the Truckers game with Bellevue. And anybody wants to discuss that, I'm game for that on Saturday morning. Besides selling a few books, signing, and seeing some old friends, Buckeye Pub and Grub does breakfast one day a week only. It's Saturday. It's great, and it's usually a good fun crowd down there. So the book signing's coming up, and we hope to see a good chance to grab the book. Um, if like I say, their first book is $15, the second one is 10. If you want to get one to give somebody. So if you've already bought a book from us at $15, bring that book, and we'll sell you another one for 10. Not a problem.
And before we move on to the new rules of emphasis, I do want to say to Greg, thanks again for joining us today. And also, thanks again for all you've done for the local officials, the Bay. I know I speak for all of us in saying you're probably one of the main cogs that kept our group going, and you definitely raised the bar when you helped create the Gold Book and everything else in football. So, big shout out to you. And, I know a lot of people don't know that stuff. unless they're actually with the Bay or around the area. So, sometimes it's good to get a little kudos. So, kudos from us, I'm sure, and so everybody knows what really happened. And before we get into the emphasis part, I do want to bring up, it seems to be the problem across almost every one of our shows. We've heard nothing but, boy, we can't get officials. And we heard it from Riley. We've heard it in videos we've went over. So what's the Bay trying to do to affect our numbers?
Well, right now, I'm not that involved in that as I used to be since we retired. My wife and I, we moved to Ashland.
I see.
So, to be around our grandkids. So we turned the reins of Secretary of the Association over to Ryan Bowers.
Great.
And that sort of thing. But I still see, like, I get the emails of everybody who pays and that sort of thing, their dues and all that. And the basketball numbers are going up. And I think that's a result of how the state is allowing, like, basketball classes to be in schools and like some high school and younger kids are taking the class. But the football numbers still doesn't seem to be rising. It's, I keep harping on, Ryan, you got to get all those basketball people into football, get some, and there's a few that I think have gone over, but I don't know. Football seems to be a tough nut to crack as far as trying to get, to me, it's. I think another issue is that all the younger athletes, they go back to their schools and they coach. They help coach. Coaching staffs are so large in football that doesn't force those people to go out into the officiating world. I mean, you go to do a game and you got 10, 15 coaches associated with a team. Everybody likes to get associated with the team that way instead of, staying in the game in other manners.
Yeah.
Where basketball, you don't have a lot of people in the coaching staff and all that. So I don't know. That's kind of my opinion. I don't know if that is really the cause and all that, but it's tough. Yeah, it's been tough to try to get people interested in doing this, and I can never understand why so many enjoy basketball. I always like football.
It's inside. It's inside.
Right, and that has a lot to, it does.
Oh, hell yeah. No, hell no.
So
no, I've had people ask, wait a minute now, wasn't you kind of a big football star up in when you was in school? And I said, yeah. So why aren't you refereeing football? I said, wait a minute. I says, my mama didn't raise no dummy. I says, it's cold, it's hot at the beginning of the season. It kind of mellows out for a couple of weeks. Next thing you got monsoons and snowstorms, and that's why I came inside and stay warm.
You generate your own heat in football when it gets cold. By moving, you generate your own body heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what happens if it's only at 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards?
You can do things. You can move.
But the state has changed a lot of. We used to have classes from July, until the season, August and that sort of thing, and get the classes in. But the state now has changed things, and they have made it available to be able to take a course online, 365, any time of the year, and test and get your license and all that. But the hardest part is like in football too. You don't have a lot of scrimmages to train people. Where basketball, when I taught the basketball class, I could take the class for like 10 scrimmages.
Sure.
There's not 10 scrimmages available in football
No.
because number one, they all scrimmage at the same time and they only get 2 apiece.
Yep.
So you're only going to go to 2 scrimmages. So there's, it's not really available. The availability of that sport being a physical sport is tough to get the training done. And in basketball, like I know Ryan has taught guys in summer camps and things like that. And there's no summer camp in football.
No.
Where you can go out and train people. So it's tough. That doesn't help either. The availability of being able to get people out on the field and get them trained.
So what are the new rule changes and points of emphasis, or any kind of observations for the upcoming season you'd like to share?
Actually, this year there was one rule change, and it had to do with jerseys.
Okay.
I think they think that home teams are getting too radical on the color of their jerseys, and the rule change is the home team shall all be the same dark color, which clearly contrasts with white. So I think they want home teams to get darker colors. So they made that a rule change. And whenever you have a uniform change, it's always like put out there 3 or 4 years ahead of actually make it go into effect. So all the schools, should and manufacturers know it's coming.
Sure.
That sort of thing. But the editorial changes, there's a lot of editorial changes, and they're a result of last year. The big change was to eliminate the 14-yard offensive penalty. In other words, you had a holding call that was 3 or 4 yards in the backfield. You had to penalize from the spot of the foul, so that you nailed that team with a 14-yard, 13-yard penalty. Just for holding. Whereas in the professional and college level, they took that from the previous spot. So finally, the high school rules came around and eliminated that penalty, where they changed a lot of things. So it's from the previous spot. You don't do that anymore. So it's like any other rule change. They kind of eliminated. They did, but they didn't. They eliminated the all but one principle out of the rule book. It's no longer in the rule book. You still kind of use that, but that's only on a foul by the defense. You apply the all but one principle, like if they go beyond the line of scrimmage, or a foul by the offense beyond the line of scrimmage.
Can you quickly describe the all but one theory for people that are novices?
Well, the all but one is basically a team gets the right to the yards they gained without the assistance of the foul. Is what it is. So if the foul happens 5 yards behind where the guy gets tackled, you administer the foul from the spot of the foul. If the foul happens 5 yards in front of where the player gets tackled, you administer the penalty from the end of the run. Right. Is basically what it kind of boils down to. And so they eliminated that and put out like a chart about, okay, if the penalty happens behind the line of scrimmage, the play ends behind the line of scrimmage, you penalize the previous spot. If it happens, beyond the line of scrimmage, and the play ends beyond the line of scrimmage, then you apply did the foul happen before? The same thing. You don't give them the advantage of a gain with the aid of a foul. So that sort of thing. So and anytime they make big rule changes like that, they're always going to refine them because there's some there's some mistakes in wording and stuff like that.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
people find in the rule book that aren't just right, and so a lot of the emphasis or editorial changes this year deal with straightening out all those rule changes from last year. Trying to clarify it, make it more clear, so on and so forth. So that has a lot to do with it, which I think people are getting more and more used to. The penalty enforcement and that sort of thing.
Right.
But and there's some new things. I had a very interesting play in the JV game this Saturday, which none of the other officials knew what the penalty enforcement was.
Yeah.
We had the rule now is that and they try to do things like they have a rule that if there's a foul by the kicking team during a free or scrimmage kick, the receiving team has the option of taking that foul from the succeeding spot. In other words, tacking it on to the end of the return. And the reason they came up with that is they don't want they're trying to eliminate kicks. They don't want the team to say, okay, move them back 5 yards, move them back 10 yards, let them re-kick. We want them to re-kick. And then now you have another punt, that sort of thing. So what they did is they changed the rules so you can tack that on. Well, we had a play where the team didn't line up properly, the kicking team. So they had 5 men in the backfield. They snapped the ball. So now we have an illegal formation penalty. The punt got blocked.
Oh.
So and they're inside the 5 punting the ball. The punt got blocked, and the receiving team recovered it on the 7-yard line. So I'm telling the other guys, I'm like, okay, we have to. They get that penalty, and so we move it half the distance to the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was strange. The punt. I said, there's nothing in the rule that says that kick must cross the neutral zone.
No.
They still get it. So, and that was the correct call, and we tacked it on and put it to the 3.5-yard line. So, some of the new rules, some of the new penalty enforcement, you got to keep up on it. And there's different and strange situations.
Well, there always is.
Yeah, so you got to watch it. But point of emphasis is always, as usual, sportsmanship, fighting and altercation protocol, player equipment, formations. They're wanting us to, I think, take a really hard look on making sure the offensive linemen are up on the line and not a yard or two deep, on any play. It's with all the passing in the high school game now. You got linemen cheating back and that sort of thing. So that's one of their the big or the points of emphasis for this year. Player equipment, as always, is in player safety. That sort of thing is always a point of emphasis, and that and it's that's always right now in high school, the biggest pain is the length of the pants and that sort of thing, and it's I mean there's games I can throw a number of guys off the field, and it's pull them down, but
Right.
It's kind of, as an official, it's disappointing when you see some of that the coaches don't take more of an active role in ensuring that their players are equipped properly or dressed properly. And they put us in that, in my opinion, they put us in a tough situation where, that we can be nitpicky now or be the bad guys. and that's always been an uncomfortable and situation, and it doesn't help, with this issue we're having with being able to have officials, because when you got guys that are going to the letter of the law, then they get peened for it, sometimes. So you never know. It doesn't help.
Oh yeah.
I would like to see coaches get more active in ensuring that everybody's dressed properly and understanding what the rules are.
It gets tough when here in the early season of football season, there have been a number of high school games broadcast on ESPN. And those are usually games between teams from adjoining states, sometimes half the country apart. A lot of the private academies, etc. And you look there and you have a number of players that wear pants that only come down or only pulled down above the knee joint. And they don't even try to pull them down. Very similar to what the college players and the pro players have done for years. And it gets harder to enforce that, because the first thing that officials hear from the coaches or from the sideline, when you've warned a player and he doesn't do it, and then you finally say, go out and get your pants fixed. Why don't you guys officiate the game instead of the uniforms? That's exactly the way I felt. But we're tasked with being the uniform police.
Yeah.
And when it's so obvious, you just know somebody's, if it's a game we work, we don't want any of our videos getting down to Columbus where they see that we're so lax on that. But, it's you can't win. That's one thing that as an official, you can't win. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So anyway, the gold book is really, I thought it was a great thing when it was first done, and I see they continue to refine it. And I believe you've got some input on some of those things. I know you're pretty close with the gang down in Columbus that puts that out, and on the website, which is wildly popular, you have your own question and answer newsletter that comes out 3 times a season. The one that you do called The Whistle. So why don't you touch on that just a little bit?
Well, one of the things that I tried to do, I didn't help write the Gold Book, but I have made suggestions and changes, which Bruce Maurer, who is the DOD, Director of Official Development for the state of Ohio for football, he's very open to suggestions and situations and changes, and it's a fluid document. And that's one of the things I really like about it. But when that came out and we started really standardizing our mechanics, I wanted to get more involved and just doing things like I became an instructor in basketball, then I became an instructor in football. And then once I became the secretary of the association, then we tried to do different things in our meetings. And one of our meeting format was, okay, let's do just a mechanics meeting. Now that we have this Gold Book and we have to do these standard things. So we invited Bruce Maurer to, I remember the one we had in Norwalk, in the gym in Norwalk. We invited him up. I think that was the first time we invited him up, and he's willing to come and meet other officials. He loves to go to association meetings and that sort of. He came up and we put on a little clinic and all that other stuff. And I think that's and then as a year goes by, then I got into being an observer for playoff games and that sort of thing. There used to be a meeting almost associated with instructors, and then a meeting for observers, and then you go to the rules interpretation. I just started running into Bruce at all these meetings and talking to him and that sort of thing. And Bruce kind of likes, crowd participation when he does things like that. And I think he got a sense that this guy knows the rules, so he started asking me questions, or like if somebody sends him a rule question, he would email it to me and say, "What do you think, Greg?" And so I would email him back and give him my opinion or what I thought the rule should be, and so on and so forth. So then they created a website, OHSAAFB.com, and on that, one of the parts of that website, they have quizzes, and each quiz contains of 7 rules questions, 2 mechanics questions out of the goal book, two, and then 1 OHSAA regulation question. What are regulation? So he had a couple guys writing them, and then I think he needed somebody, so he asked me to join the ranks. So there's 3 of us that write the quizzes, so that we do 3 quizzes each. So weeks 1 through 9, there's a quiz that some crews use it for their pregame. They take it with them on the road and do it on the road. A lot of guys just do it individually, I guess, or whatever. But so I come up with 3 quizzes each year at different times. This year I was week 3, so I had to have mine in last Friday, so I sent it in, and but he asked it. Well, each guy kind of named their quizzes, had a title for it, and I was like, so he asked me, well, what's your title and all that? So I just copied the one of the things that's for the association. I came up with the idea of publishing a monthly newsletter to the association that I titled The Whistle, just so people would know what it is. And so I just copied that and called it The Whistle. So, and I think, I think I've been doing it now this might be my 8th season or something like that. We're doing the quizzes.
Cool.
I got all the copies. I don't want to look real quick. But yeah, it's been about 8 years. I don't know, 8 to 10 years or something like that. Might have been 2014, 2016 is when I started. So, but I do that stuff because it helps me study. It forces me to get into the books, to get into the rules. It forces me to look at certain things in a different, and I enjoy, like when I get an email from Bruce and somebody has a rule question and well, what's your opinion, your thoughts on this? How should this be applied, and that sort of thing. And that helps my study, because I not only study the rules, like last Friday was my first game. I'm not done studying. I study them all the way through the season.
Good.
And really, like, okay, what did we do wrong last week, or what could we have done better? And so need to pay attention to that, so that, you don't make the same mistake 2 games in a row.
Well, you hope, right?
Yeah.
You hope.
So I try to keep up with them and just study it, the whole season.
Jimmy.
And like Bruce, the state, he puts out a bulletin, a weekly bulletin for us on things that happened and so on and so forth from the games and all that. So I go through that bulletin and make sure that number one, we didn't make the bulletin.
Right.
Number two, that it gives you something to talk with your crew about as reminders, going into a game and that sort of thing. Use it as your pregame.
Yeah, like a lessons learned kind of thing.
Exactly.
Well, I used that a couple of times when we had athletic directors that questioned something we did or didn't do. I will copy the bulletin. I said, you can look this up online at OHSAAFB.com. Go to bulletins, go to the bulletin number 3, point number 17. We were directed to do it this way. And that was not the only time we heard it that year. And, you should have, that stuff's available. If anybody looks at it on your staff or whatever, they're going to see that. And so it's great. The whole website is fabulous for football officials. If there's anybody to listen to this, it's outside of Ohio. It's not a subscription thing or a password thing. You can get into that website. There is just a ton of stuff. Everybody uses Federation rules, except Texas, I believe. They're still the lone holdout because they want to be more like college, I guess. But there is a ton of stuff you can use there. It's a fabulous site. And I think it's great, Greg, that somebody from up north was asked to do that. And it takes a lot of time to develop those questions or to look for those things, to put out a good sheet. When you've got 2 cohorts doing it, that's 7 times 9, 63 rules questions that you put in there, not to try to stump the official, but to make them, things that happen in games for real, make them think about how to handle it.
Sure.
Well, and you don't want to come up with the once in a lifetime play.
Right. Absolutely.
You have to apply this rule, that rule, right, to get to this, point, because you want to try to come up with certain situations where it's a normal play and it's a normal mistake officials can make.
Sure.
To try to remind them, that sort of thing. One thing that like what Bruce does also with me, I don't know if he does it with the other guys, but during the playoffs, when he gets questions about playoffs, he sent me, like the observations from the playoffs, like if there was a tricky play that an observer turned in and that sort of thing. So he would send me those, and then I would take those emails and I put them in a folder, and then I would go through them and, I can use this for a quiz question next year and that sort of thing. And the majority of our mistakes in the playoffs, because we use a lot of the more seasoned officials, let's say, are the difference between the college rule and the high school rule. Because there's a lot of guys who do college that are doing the playoffs, and they get some of those things mixed up. So that the state finds that's our biggest mistake in during playoffs and that sort of thing. But,
interesting, very interesting.
But one thing
we've got to sell
about I've been an observer in football. One thing I kind of enjoyed is Bruce put in a very formal observation process for playoff football officials. If you get an observer at your playoff game, they should, they're going to come in and talk to you at halftime. They're going to come in and talk to you after the game, and you're going to get a formal written report, and not so much about the calls you made, but about your mechanics and so on and so forth. And I got involved in that early on. I mean, because I went to a playoff game one time, and like a guy drove 2 hours. I think I was charting penalties for Dave Wintery's crew when they were a state crew, and they had a game in Sandusky. And actually, one of the guys on that state crew was on my crew. I worked with him in Urbana. When I lived in Urbana, so I'm like, I want to get, I'm gonna chart penalties for you guys tonight, because we have to do in playoff games. Every referee has to do a penalty report, or a game,
sure,
game report, and that includes all the penalties for that night. So you need somebody on the sidelines to actually chart those for you. So the guy who observed them was like, drove 2 hours to go to that, and I'm like, so I contacted Kenny Meyer, who
that's crazy,
is the man in charge of the observers in Northwest Ohio. I said, Kenny, I'm like, this guy had to drive 2 hours. I mean, you didn't have anybody closer in the area? I'm like, I can do it for you if you need people, let me know. And so the next year he said, here, go to this class, and and I went to the meeting and all that, and I became an observer. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, you might, when it was kind of tough though when you only got 1 or 2 playoff games and you're observing guys who are in crew number 5,
sure,
that are doing a state game, and you're telling them what they're doing wrong. But but the beauty of that gold book was we had a standard, and it is in black and white, and you just, if you stuck to the standard, you can point things out on how we can do things differently and improve and so on and so forth. And I tell you what, the difference of watching officials when that gold book came out, I think 10 years ago, and now is like night and day. It's hard to, I mean, guys do things so correct these days versus what it was at the beginning. And it's really, I think it's really improved the overall high school officiating in the state of Ohio. It really has. I remember one time, a funny story was, I'm observing a playoff game up in Port Clinton, and this is COVID year, right? So they had to have a fill-in, and he was a Big Ten official, because the Big Ten wasn't working. They didn't work, or they didn't have games. So some of the Ohio Big Ten officials that still had their license or got their license, and they refereed some high school games. So I'm telling this Big Ten official what he did wrong.
What'd he say?
He respected. He respected, because the gold book was foreign to him to a certain extent.
Sure.
But he understood the logic, and he goes, okay. And he was working a different position than what he usually works in the Big Ten too. So he understood. But I mean, he was an old time high school official. He knew obviously knew the game and all that. But he really respected the process of being observed, it being formal, written process, and sat down and we discussed the issues and that sort of thing. So it was enjoyable in the end, but it was kind of funny that here I am, this guy's in a Big Ten, and I'm telling him what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey Jimmy, you got any questions for Greg? And then I've got one last one.
I mean, it's like in football, but earlier when we were talking about you should have your football pants, pull this down, get off the side. It's just like like in basketball, the first year when they made it mandatory about the compression shorts. I said, here we are, Don had a game earlier in the day. And then we went up to, I think it was Genoa. And that night, and the kids were taking their warm-up pants off, and one team had the spandex shorts, and the other team, home team, didn't. And we're looking at each other like, really? We just went through this and thing. Now we got to be the bad guys. So we went over and told the coach, and he said, I've told the kids this. So 2 or 3 of them would go off the court at a time, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, are these kids sick? Are they going? Well, then the home team fans are starting to look like, oh, they've taken their shorts off. Well, yeah, because and then all of a sudden it's like, why ain't these guys doing it? Because they're wearing spandex. Why are we the bad guys? It's just like in girls basketball. I don't care if you want to wear your team color ribbons, fine. Is it going to make you jump any higher? No. So why the hell do we got to be the bad guys?
Yeah.
It's just things are just getting to a point where putting us on the spot, and then we got to make some. And then the same thing with the girls piercing their ears before the start, and then they got tape on their ears, and then we got to say, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
Now we're the bad. Why didn't you get it done as soon as school was out previous year? It's just goofy stuff. And all of a sudden people are questioning you about it, and that's not fair to us. We're just doing what we were told. If the coaches were listening instead of trying to find out, and I'm joking, guys, the coaches, that you're trying to figure out what is the good place to stop and get something to eat after the meeting. Ask us referees. We have our weekly meetings. We know the hot spots. So, I just want to make sure it's just a little fun around, coaches. You can't get at me anyway because I'm not working anymore.
Go ahead, Don.
Okay, coaches, who is this guy? Coaches, look at this. Who is this guy right here?
Oh, geez.
You can
whiz.
find out who that is on page 24 of our book. That right there is Ohio High School All-State receiver Jimmy Borgia. And the only place you'll find that picture anymore is in this book. It's on Amazon. Just go on to Amazon. In that search bar on the top, just put Official Tales Book. It'll take you right to the website. If you're doing it on a computer or an iPad, you can usually get a chance. Preview the first 20 pages or so. There's lots more information about that. 3 good-looking blind mice here on the back page. Little story. But you get it there, $16.50, and come to the book signings. You can get her there for a little cheaper, and
Sure.
we can have a little conversation. So let's
I
get
did
ready
have
to close this sucker down here.
Well, I did have one other quick uniform story before we close her down. You were talking about strange things they were wearing. Don and I were working a girls' game, and it was during the warm-ups. And we saw a girl going through the layup line and noticed something flowing from the back of her socks. And we were like, what the? And I looked at Don and I said, are those capes on the back of her socks? And sure enough, she was wearing a superhero kind of sock with capes flowing from the back of her legs. And I looked at Don and I'm like, now Don, I don't say that I know every rule in the book, but I'm not sure that covers it anywhere. And actually, come to find out, that's the first thing the coach asked us when we walked over. He goes, well, are those socks legal? And I looked at Don and I said, well, he's the interpreter. Ask him. And Don goes,
it does not address adornments to socks.
Yep, and then it's going to be your turn.
Yep.
Go ahead,
no adornment.
Go ahead, Greg. It's your turn.
Doesn't address it.
My funny story, my first varsity flag that I threw in my first varsity game.
Okay.
I'm a bad judge, right? There's a punt. The kid makes a fair catch signal, catches the ball, looks around. Nobody's around him. He takes off running. So I come in, blow the whistle, and throw the flag. The referee comes running up. He goes, "What do you have?" I told him, I says, "I don't have any idea, but what he did's a penalty." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I don't know what the penalty is, but what he did is a penalty. He can't take off after that." And he goes, "Well, you're supposed to know what the penalty is." I said, "Well, you're the referee, don't you know?" So we went, excuse me, we went back and forth a little bit, and one of the guys come running, and he goes, "It's a delay of game." And we go, "Get out of here. It's got to be either invalid or valid, illegal fair." He goes, "No, it's a delay of game." So-and-so did that in a game with me in Springfield one time, so we're like, okay, we're going to go with that, but we're looking it up at halftime. and he was right. It's a delay of game penalty. And I'll never forget that that's a delay of game penalty.
I gotta get you on a quickie here. Our crew is down at Mansfield Madison working a game, and one of our wings wasn't there, and Charlie Floor took his place. Now I've got Rick and Charlie, who were the two guys that taught my football officiating class together. They were best of friends. So there, we had a pass that was incomplete between Charlie and I, and so we both threw flags. And he went over. He says, "You got defensive interference?" I says, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll tell Rick." So he goes up there, and what he told Rick was, "I've got offensive interference, but your back judge has defensive interference." He turned and ran to the corner, right back to his position, and left Rick there going, He got over there, turned and laughed, and Rick got that done. What am I going to do? Oh, he turned and pointed towards the defense, saying, "I got to take care of." I know Charlie just could not wait to have a situation like that to get Rick. But what I used to do to Charlie when we worked at Sandusky, Charlie'd be the sideline microphone guy for the Sandusky radio station after he retired. When I had to return balls to the sideline as the back judge, I'd aim for Charlie every time I threw him over there.
Well,
Make him dodge.
I will tell you before we close, some of the most interesting and of course, oppressive looks as you think it's on the field. You should work for like color commentary for television, and you're watching, like I did for Buckeye Cable Sports Network, and you're watching the game and you're trying to call it and you're trying to be fair to the officials on the field because you have the best perspective from up there. But when something happens on the field, Perkins, Sandusky, because we were local here, and I'm up in the booth calling this stuff, and they all know you. Everybody that's in that booth knows who you are, and they know you refereed. And something happens that's a little bit, let's just say, questionable. Everybody looks at you and goes, "What was that?" And you're like, "Oh, apparently they didn't see it the way we saw it." I mean, we had
Nobody
passes,
blocking their vision.
Yeah, I know. We had passes that were not catches that they called catch, and we had all kinds of crazy stuff up there. And it's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well. And the other funny thing is, as soon as you walk in and you sit down and you lay all your stuff out and you're getting ready for the game, you're talking to your coworker, and that's the first thing these guys do. They bring up 4 or 5 like plays from last week. Like, well, this happened. Is that really a catch or what? And like, wait a minute. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I didn't see the video. So yeah, I can tell you what the rule says. That's all I can help you with. So, but anyway, that's also something that's kind of crazy. But anyway, Greg, thanks again for joining us today. We're getting a little long here, so we better shut her down and everybody get back to their normal lives. So, guys, you have anything to say in closing?
No, thanks, Greg.
No.
It's been a blast having you.
Thank you.
I think I've only seen you once at the banquet a couple of years ago when since we've been gone. It's 7 years, but it's great to see you, buddy.
Oh,
great to see you. Absolutely,
I appreciate this. This was fun.
Yeah, and stay healthy and
guest.
Yeah, stay healthy, and we hope to have you back. I know we've talked to Ryan Bowers too. he definitely wants to join and be part of the show. So we hope to have you back maybe mid-season. You know, maybe you'll have some crazy, plays that you saw, or God knows what. Who knows? The way things are these days. So again, thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.
All right, take care,
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.